Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of DSI Live. I'm your host, Vanessa Emerson, founder of Dental Speaker Institute and Dental Speakers Bureau, and I'm very excited to be here tonight with our friends and colleagues, John Stamper and Sandra Berger. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Absolutely.
So we're here to talk a little bit about CE and the state of the industry around meetings and how things are changing. And before we jump into that, I was hoping John and Sandra, and John, maybe you can start us off with why would I be talking to you about this? What is it about your experience that brings you here as a leader? Give us an idea of what your road, the journey is that has brought you to this point.
Yeah, well, thanks, Vanessa. First off, I was, as we were sharing before we got started, I'm so glad that you decided to do this evening, because I am sure that just in the last 7 to 14 days, all of the people that you work with, speakers and coaches and consulting, for those people that were out there going to events and in many cases providing content and the attendees getting continuing education, that's the way that the world was. And I think we're all encouraged that that's the way the world is going to get back to here, hopefully, somewhat shortly. But in the meantime, I think what we have seen is this ability for individuals to provide their own course, and then more importantly, to be able to have that course count as continuing education for anybody that attends. Not only that, but do it in a way that many of us are learning very quickly how to do, which is do it a course or a virtual event on Facebook Live, do it on your own website, or create your own video, or do a podcast. And so those things have come upon everybody really, really quickly. And I know that both Sandra and I'm excited for Sandra to share with all of you her experience. She has been doing this for a long time in the world of continuing education and sponsoring courses, and really understands all the ins and outs. So she's going to share all those details with you. But I think at high level, Vanessa, it's just the times are changing. Yeah. And I think most importantly, people right now want to know, if I'm going to give a course, how do I make sure that it can count for continuing education? What are the things that I need to do? And that's what Sandra and I hope to help all your listeners learn a little bit more tonight.
Perfect. Sandra, before you go, I want to say we already have a compliment on your hair is beautiful. Shauna has said your hair is beautiful. And thank you guys for listening in. If you have questions for John or Sandra, put them in your comments there. And Sandra, back to you. Let us know a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So I am a dental hygienist, and I was a study club coordinator for about 10 years and submitted ADA CERP and AGD PACE applications many times. When that transition, people would always come and ask me to help them. And my career moved on, and I was always helping people. And when I found out that I was going to be a grandma and didn't want to have to travel or deal with anyone else, I started my own company, helping people complete their AGD application or approving courses. And a few years ago, John and I paired up, and we're using both of our expertise to bring that to speakers and meeting planners.
I just love that. I love that the two of you got together and you have a really great solution, which we're going to get to here in just a little bit. But going back to John's comments, I mean, the world really is a different place than it was even just 2 weeks ago. For me, the realization that this was real and really coming was the night I heard that Hinman had made the absolute right decision to cancel their meeting. That's when it got really real for me. And that was just a couple of weeks back. Everything is different now. And in the conversations I'm having with meeting planners and with speakers and consultants, we're talking a lot about how do we continue to, reinvent ourselves and our offerings. We know the world is going to be different. It's not going to go back to exactly how it was. And that's a good thing in a lot of ways. So this is a real opportunity for our speakers that are listening in to think about what is it that they teach? What do they need to be sharing right now with audiences, with clients? where on that road to recovery, as practices go back into the office, what type of information should they be sharing? They need to be looking at their own offerings to determine how did they reinvent themselves, how do they renew as we go back into this. And then this is where you guys come in, especially right now when there's not a dental practice operating at the moment for them to go and teach in. One obvious solution for them to be able to share as a consultant or to speak on behalf of meetings is the virtual meeting platform. So what I'm hearing from meeting planners is one, they're looking for help in knowing how to get that set up. And you guys offer a solution, John, through DentalCast Productions, and then there's a wide range of solutions. We've offered some like just basics on virtual meetings. We've provided some information there, but then also there's that missing element of CE. I did have a society reach out to me and ask for help because, and this was immediately, they had to cancel their meeting, but they have a couple thousand members that needed their CE. So they were wanting to know right away, how do I get speakers that are qualified to speak on CE and maybe could even give the CE? So that's a whole lot. Now, is there a question in there? Yes. The question is, knowing where we're at and how we're pivoting, what solutions, what do you feel, let's start with unpacking this with both first speakers and consultants, and then secondly, planners, who it's a different type of a meeting. For speakers and consultants, what tips do you have for them around offering CE? Do you see it as something they need to be doing now?
Yeah, I think what Sandra and I talked about, we're gonna try to do here for everybody, Vanessa, is I will go the direction of some of the high level things to think about as far as what they do. And I don't really think there's anybody better than identifying the details of continuing education and how to frame it out than Sandra. One of the things that Sandra has taught me, and although you said that, and you're right, like a lot of things are different and they're not going to be the same. I think one of the things that we've been talking about in this last week is there actually are a lot of things that are the same. And that is that content has always mattered and it still matters, right? And so for anybody individually that wants to give a course and they want it to count for continuing education, the same things that they would have had to do before in regards to identifying key objectives and the title and the things that they wanted their listeners to learn, those stay the same. Right. And so I think those things stay the same. And I think to your point, if we talk about speakers and consultants, first off, there was a time, and I think there still will be, where a lot of those individuals would go to a society meeting and they would fall under the umbrella of the society's continuing education license, or they would handle a lot of that. And like you mentioned, that might be changing. They might be asking a lot of these individuals, do you have your own course sponsored and have all of that buttoned up so that maybe they don't have to worry about that? So I think that's really kind of the main message initially is that so many of these speakers and consultants have already great content. They're already talking about things that are relevant. Now it's just a matter of maybe taking the time to get it on paper and identify the specifics of how they make it a CE course. And Sandra, I think this is a great place for you to come in and maybe talk about some of those key areas that they can focus on.
Yeah, so the CE course is basically the same. They have to be comfortable in front of the camera, or they don't even have to have a camera. They could just show their PowerPoint. But it's no different when it's live virtual than when it's live in person. And you still want to have content. So one thing that I think what John was referring to that kind of upset me is in the past week or so, when everything was shut down, there were a lot of pop-up CE programs that weren't really thought out very well. And the people might have been really good speakers, but did they have a plan? And when you go to get a course approved, either by us or by if you go into the AGD or ADA, the planning is the big part. You have to be an expert on what you're speaking on, but you also have to have some kind of a plan of why you want to speak, what you want them to learn, how you will teach them, and ultimately what the ending will be, what they'll come away with.
The outcome. Mm-hmm.
The outcome, the objectives, what you want them to learn. And and then giving it is where you come in, where,
Yeah.
where they need help delivering that. But you don't want to forget that just because it's online, that it's not, it shouldn't be, that it should be high quality.
Oh, totally.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
sorry, guys. This is live video. At least I don't have the cat on my head like that one guy, right?
Oh, yeah.
If my dogs weren't so loud, they'd be in here
Maybe
too.
there too. I can't get away from cats at my house. So right now, what speakers can do would be, then we're saying, to look at their existing content. I think it would be important to think about what the pain point has changed. In many cases, the challenge that dental offices are facing is certainly different today than it was even a month ago. And so to look at their content, take those existing courses that already are being approved when they speak on the circuit, modify, and make sure that it still is CE worthy. So let me roll into the next part, is like, how do we know that? How do we know if it's CE worthy? I've heard before that you can apply for CE. It's a laborious process, and I've heard it's a very long application, and it takes a while, a great while. So this is all hearsay, but you're the expert, Sandra. So can I ask you about that? I mean, if I'm trying to get a workshop out here in the next month and offer CE, and let's say I am an expert and it's something I've been doing before, I've just modified it for the current day. What are my steps to be able to get CE fast so that I can offer my own CE?
So if you're looking for a month away, even 4 months away, you would have to become a joint provider with someone that already has that capability, either through AGD or ADA. And you sign a joint provider agreement, and that person, be it CE Exchange or whomever, will make sure that your course content is good, and not they won't look at your course content, or at least I don't look at course content. I'm not the expert. I just make sure that whoever is giving it is the expert. I recently had someone apply for a course, and I looked at her bio, and she was a veterinary technician, like last year. And so I had to call her up and find out, why being a veterinary technician made her an expert to give. It was actually on HPV, and she explained it, and I felt comfortable. Yes, she did know what she was talking about, and it was going to be good. So that's how. If you had a longer period of time and you wanted to become your own provider, AGD applications are 4 times a year. So the next one would be June 12th sometime, and then you wouldn't find out your answer until September 30th.
Mhm.
And it's a difficult application. I do, at least 10 a year, and I still, have to hold myself up in a room and not have any distractions, and it still takes me a good week or two to finish. And it's costly. So you really have to look at your time, the cost of the application, as opposed to partnering with a company that can do it for you.
Right.
And yes, there's a fee, but the timing is much quicker, and your work is much less.
Yeah.
Thank you for confirming that. And I wanted to just jump off of, I think maybe John made the comments a few minutes ago too. I want to just clarify, because we've got quite a few people watching, and thank you guys for tuning in. We do have a question or two that I'm going to ask you guys here in just a minute.
Sure.
Thank you for all of your comments here. I personally don't see this as being a situation where a lot of meetings are going to not be able to do it, right? Because a lot of meetings already can provide their own CE. So for instance, like the society that reached out to me, he was just trying to figure out, like, where can I find a speaker? How do I put this together? He was trying to figure out the semantics of it, and they can totally give their own CE. And I think probably a
Yep.
lot of them still can. So this part of our conversation really is for the speaker and consultant out there that is kind of swimming fast to get ahead of the tide and try to figure out, what do I have to offer that could offer CE and maybe make my programs more appealing out there. So that's really helpful to know that the joint provider, so finding someone that will allow you to be a joint provider with them through either ADA or AGD CE. How do we find that? How do we find someone who offers that?
Well, so we can help. I mean, we are certainly, that's what we do. But I think, like Sandra mentioned, there are other people in the industry that have gone down that path. And I'm glad that you clarified that, Vanessa. A lot of the societies, many of which all have their own license, whether they've done it directly through their state dental board, and or they've gone through the process that we've gone through, or Sandra's gone through, or what have you. So I did want to, after hearing Sandra talk, if I may, I thought this might be good to kind of clarify this as well, because I get this question a lot. So when it comes to continuing education, I think there tends to be a lot of confusion that ADA and AGD are they're the governing entities, right, that govern continuing education. And this is still a big mystery to people. The only entity that governs continuing education is the state dental board, right? And so each state dental board, every year or every couple of years, when dentists and hygienists and dental assistants and a good portion of state have to go renew their license, right? Everybody, as everybody knows, has to take a certain amount of continuing education hours. The question comes in is that every state is different, is that states will do audits. So they will either audit 10% of their providers, or they'll audit 25% of their providers. And so in those cases, it's the state board that is going to audit. So let's give an example. Let's say that a state, the Texas board audits 10% of their dentists. And they ask their dentists to send in all of the hours that they took in the last 2 years. It is at that moment when that state board might go through and look at all of the certificates for all the hours that dentist is claiming he or she took. That's when they might go in and look at a certificate and say, oh, this is certified by the AGD, or this is, this was sponsored by, the ADA, or whatever the case may be. And in those instances, this is where Sandra's talking about the work of going through the process of being a provider, is that in those instances, they may go back to, for example, CE Exchange or another entity that has that AGD license. They may ask for that information. So in other words, do you have the information of the records of that particular course? Do you have the sign-in sheet? All of those things. So one of the things that Sandra and I have to make sure that we do is we have to keep on, really anybody, I should say, that has AGD or ADA approval has to keep on record all of the statistics from all these meetings. So if you do decide that you wanted to go down that path and get your own AGD or ADA license, you certainly could do that. And I think what Sandra would note is that there is a whole administrative process that goes behind that you have to keep records for a certain amount of time, because ultimately, if CE Exchange sponsored a course and we did not get the adequate information that we needed to, and one of the attendees got audited, it actually could be our license if we don't have that information. So I think that's why Sandra makes these points a lot when people hear her talk about seeing a course that got marketed without, the proper AGD logo or a lot of those different things, because now that we've transitioned to this virtual world, and Sandra, I know you can speak more to this, a lot of those entities that are giving these licenses, AGD and ADA, I would imagine their eyes are going to be open a little bit more now that the world is changing, to make sure that people are doing what they need to do to uphold the credibility and the integrity of this content. So Sandra, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that. But
no, I agree.
I hope that was helpful. I just wanted to clarify that on the board side.
Yeah. And then another thing as far as the state board is AGD, I can approve anything that I feel is worthy of CE, but that also doesn't mean that your state board is going to allow it towards your license. And
Exactly.
Midwinter has a really great blurb that Dr. Boris has allowed me to use. And it says something like, this course, may not go for your license, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to take it. And and it's true. And that's my passion, is giving quality continuing education. It's not giving continuing education that goes for your license. So in Texas, for instance, their courses can only be scientific. And that's crazy, because a dentist needs to know how to run his business. And
Right.
especially now, these would be perfect times to take courses on how to run your business. If you have consultants out there and have teams that they know have projects that should be done, that when their schedule is full, it's difficult. This is a really great time that maybe they could, try to educate people on what needs to be cleaned up, so that when they go back to practicing, they're at a better spot. But if you're in Texas, that won't count towards your license.
Well, that's a
Very
really good point.
frustrating.
And so what I hear you saying is, be sure you check in with your state board of dentistry. Like, I was looking this up the other day for California, and I could find their requirements online. It was pretty much spelled out, what is allowed, what's not allowed. One thing I noticed there was that there's only limited online recorded content. So let's say not necessarily a virtual meeting like we're having right now, where people are actually live and it's happening. But if we were to record this and then sell it later, there would be a limited amount of times that people could actually watch a meeting like that. It doesn't, right? That's my understanding. Is that pretty much across the board? The online recorded is like a smaller percentage compared to the live?
Yes. I'm not sure exactly. In New Jersey, it's half. So for dentists, it would be 20 hours of their 40. Hygienists, it would be 10 of their 20. But that is important. But my message is more that you should take continuing education, and speakers should give continuing education of what they need to learn.
Oh, sure.
And as opposed to what you need to get for your license. But yes, to go for your license, you most states know. Like if I have someone from Texas, they know right away that a practice management course isn't going to go towards their license.
I hear you, and we're in total agreement here. So we're preaching to the choir, right? Because the people that are watching this would be speakers and consultants that do have a myriad of courses. But the pain point right now for us in our industry is, how do I get out in front of people that, first of all, to help, but also to keep my business alive, to be able to have like a low-cost seminar or something. And that's where I'm feeling that this would be really helpful for speakers and consultants to be able to offer CE if they don't have that proper certification ability now. And so let me ask you a clarification on that then. So let's say I'm Jane Smith, consultant, and I want to offer a course that would typically be would qualify for CE. And because we can't meet in person right now, I want to offer a one-day virtual meeting where I pull people together, and they come in maybe at 9 in the morning, would be done by 5. We'll have some breaks in there. What type of considerations do I, as that speaker, the person who's holding the meeting, what do I need to know as far as paperwork and like proving that people are there, and testing mechanisms, and like what in general would the requirements be that I, as the person who's offering this meeting, what do I need to be, how do I get those ducks in a row so if there were an audit, we'd be covered?
So a 1 hour of CE has to be at least 50 minutes or longer. So as you're creating that schedule, you want to create speakers that are speaking, or a course that's at least 50 minutes or longer. And let's see, what else would you want? There does have to be some type of attendee verification. You don't want someone to, turn it on at 8 o'clock in the morning and, go homeschool their children and come back at 5 o'clock and sign out. So there's different ways. If it's live and interactive, there doesn't have to be a test. And there are different platforms that you can buy that will monitor attendee activity. So if they click out of your window, they're considered not there, and that type of thing. Or you can have people that moderate it and ask for codes. There's lots of different ways to do that.
I found with like GoToTraining is one that I'm going to be using for my 2-day workshop, and it offers polls and little different like exercises, and maybe that would be something that you could, as a speaker, could be able to save from your session, the output that we saw that the people were here and they were participating in the polls. We saw that they were participating in this exercise, and then maybe even offering at the end the something that they would need to sign so that you could send them the CE or something, maybe a Google Doc or something was kind of a suggestion I had heard to keep them.
Yeah, so I've actually gone over and over and over the guidelines to make sure that we're doing it correctly. And again, the planning of a program is the biggest thing. So if you're doing something and it turns out that you're capturing your attendees is not really great, if you can back that up with why you thought it would be great, you're okay. And then if you learn from it. So it's really the planning. And you want to make sure that you discuss that before you put your course on or before you even market your course, how things are going to go.
I'm not sure I'm following this. So do you mean so that you can back up later and explain to if you were audited from CE?
Yeah, if you were audited or if someone made a formal complaint that, people were just coming in and out and getting CE and and I sat there all day long, that type of thing. And it happens. There are eyes out there. It happens more than you can imagine.
Yeah. Well, we can't really guarantee if someone were sitting in our audience that they're not checked out, reading a book or something either. Right?
That's true.
People check out in person, right? I mean, how many times have
I've had people bring knitting and crocheting, in a class. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's where it goes.
Vanessa, one of the things, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's where it goes back again to us ensuring that we have interactive sessions. And our faculty at DSI, I noticed we're offering, I think Margie had one today on how to keep it interesting and keep it interactive. I know multiple of our faculty are preparing presentations right now on how do you make sure that virtual presentation is going to keep people's attention. And then I actually just got my own book in the mail. It's not my book, but I just ordered this Impactful Online Meetings. I mean, there's meetings out there already that teach us how to make sure that we have that kind of engagement. John, thank you.
Yep. I just lost my light, so I'm going to go inside here real quick.
Did you bring a flashlight?
All I wanted to
we could do the flashlight around the campfire.
I know, right? So just one of the things I wanted to share along your question that you asked, that's good as far as the design of the meeting. And Sandra and I talk about this a lot. And that is that, let's say, for example, somebody does want to have an 8-hour session.
Ooh, we're losing you now, John.
And as we know, and there's been a lot of,
Hey, John, go back a little bit. We just lost you for a second there when you came in. So you said we wanted to have a 7 or 8 hour session.
Yeah. So for example, like if you wanted to have a 7 or 8 hour session, as you guys know, there's a lot of companies out there that are part of these meetings, right? So companies want to sponsor the speaker or they want to be a part of it. And there's always a little bit of unknown is, will it count for continuing education if there's a company that does a little, half an hour session or they want to talk about their product or service, and how does that look like in the world of continuing education? And one of the things that Sandra and I brainstorm on a lot, and Sandra does when she talks to these people, like you said, Vanessa, that are going to plan maybe a whole day meeting, is that just because you're going to be there for 8 hours doesn't mean that you have to give 8 hours of continuing education, right? You could look at your day and maybe you feel comfortable, or in the case of Sandra, a lot of times she'll look at it and she'll say, for for this 8-hour course, I feel comfortable that you could give 4 hours of continuing education credits, because there is at least 4 hours of what we would consider really, really good, content that adheres to where there wouldn't be any issues. So I would just suggest sometimes that it doesn't always have to equal an 8-hour day equals 8 hours CE. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think both of you guys said this, is try, if you can, to not get caught up in, I recognize that marketing your course as continuing education, a lot of people will say that gets people's attention because that makes sure that they come, to the course because it's continuing education. Sandra says this all the time, and we always talk about it, and I love it, is that I would much rather give a course that is full of content that people came to, and if they get CE, it's a bonus. Now, I recognize a lot of people might hear that, may say to me, whoa, John, well, wait a minute, we need to get our CE, but I think we're all getting to the point where we're realizing that it's about the content. It's about personal development, professional development. No longer is a dental practice successful if it's just the clinical. And I think more and more people are realizing that. And so these are just some things to think about, that maybe the way it used to be, that it's changing to get creative on how you design, like you mentioned, Vanessa, a virtual event. It doesn't always have to be one-on-one as far as the hours versus the CE.
So. It needs to always be about that education.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then, but to add to that, if a course might not go towards your license, but has gone through the AGD approval, it still gives it more credibility, because someone has really backed it and made sure that the person knows what they're talking about, and that there's not a conflict of interest. And that's not to say that if I work for XYZ company that does ABC, I can't talk about ABC. I just can't talk about the company. So I say, you can talk about fluoride if you work for 3M or Voco. You can talk about fluoride all you want. You just can't talk about Voco's fluoride or 3M's fluoride. So being in a company does not stop you, or having a company who wants to speak at your event does not negate that it could be continuing education. It absolutely could be continuing education.
I can see where we need to add a session on at Jumpstart just about CE. Because it's like opening a bundle of worms. So it's like there's so many questions that we just don't know.
And I'll climb up in my soapbox and
Well, it's kind of like it's this thing everybody knows about, but it's kind of secret, because you don't really 100% know, and I've been in the industry almost 20 years and working with speakers. There's still areas where I'm like, I'm not 100% sure, because I'm not an expert in this area, but it's complicated. Let's answer a couple of questions, and thank you guys so much for hanging with us and for shooting out some questions to us here. So we have on here, now where did it go? Margie asks us, can CE credits be offered in less than 1 hour increments? I found that long online programs are challenging to keep an audience's attention. Can we do a half a CE?
For self-instruction or on demand, that was recently changed. So yes, you can have half an hour.
Oh, wow. So the recorded sessions.
The recorded session or an video, audio, or paper.
Yeah, and I'll give an example to that, Vanessa. So we just recently did some work with Dr. Len Tao, where we got really creative, right? And this is hopefully a good tip for some of the speakers and consultants listening here, is that we took Len's book and we actually broke it into a 3-hour on-demand CE course. So what we did is we took a lot of the content in there. Sandra went through there. We pieced it up and together. And then when we recorded it for him, we recorded 3 1-hour on-demand courses, and each 1 hour had 15-minute modules, right? And to Sandra's point, if somebody is going to watch that, if they're only going to watch it, to maybe Margie's point, maybe somebody only wants to watch something for like 30 minutes and then they're done for a couple of days and they get busy, they can come back and watch part 3 and 4 of that 1 hour module. And I think that's one of the nice things about some of these on-demand courses, is that you don't have to watch all 3 hours in order to get the continuing education at once. You don't have to binge watch like we've all been watching Tiger King or Netflix. You can actually break it up, over a certain amount of time. So that's for the on-demand stuff. But I think, Margie brings up a good point, which is for some of these longer lives, it can get a little trickier, and you probably would be best to do an on-demand if you wanted the shorter hours, like Sandra mentioned.
And it really is going to be critical as a speaker to be a really good speaker, meaning we're not if you're going to do even an hour virtual with somebody fire hosing you with information, it's going to be like your eyeballs will be rolling back in your head, right? So it's going to be important for us as educators to utilize adult learning concepts to be able to really chunk our material down into bite-sized pieces and let them work with it and give them a chance to do an exercise or a debrief somehow. I mean, it's going to be so essential. But for those who can move into this, those who want to embrace virtual, I think the sky is going to be the limit. Mm-hmm. As we roll out of this, I keep using the analogy of the Yahtzee cup that's being shaken up and thrown, and we're going to be thrown out here at some point. We're still in the shake right now because we don't know what our hand's going to be once those dice are rolled out. But once they are, I have a really strong belief that we're going to have even more live streaming from meetings, more virtual attendance. But I just can't believe that we'll ever not meet in person. It's just too valuable for us to not meet in person. So we'll have our meetings.
I
back
agree.
again. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes. But I can't tell you, I've had I would say at least 10 people email me in the past week that all of their CE that they were supposed to attend has now moved online, and will it count for their state? And I tried to get the only state that I'm 100% sure that wasn't real happy about live online CE is Illinois. I've tried to get a hold of them and I haven't been successful yet, but I did talk to someone in New Jersey, and they accept online as live regardless, as long as it's like this where we can talk to each other. You can send a question, but the person that I talked to said that even if they didn't in these times, they will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
there's no other alternative,
right? Right. I mean, some people could say wait until September and then you can take it, but why do that when this is a perfect time and there's so much out there?
Yeah. Agreed. Okay, one more question, and then we're going to move and head into our wrap up. So the question from Hannah Coffey is, do AGD applications, once approved, do they expire? And maybe tell us a little bit more about that. Like how long are they approved for? What's that process like if you have to reapply?
So an AGD application to become an AGD PACE provider, yes, when you're approved either 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. And most new applications are given 1 year if you're a new company. 2 and 3, I have quite a few 4s. But the application fee is, close to $800. And if you are approved for 1 year, you have to pay that almost $800 application fee.
Yikes.
7 or 8 months later to do that.
And
yeah.
Is
the
process easier that second time around? I mean, as far as the paperwork side of it?
Technically,
you're supposed to say yes here.
I mean, I'm actually finishing my own AGD application right now, and I'm still like looking at some of my paperwork and thinking, oh wait, this is this has to be updated, and I need to ask for that, and yes in a way, and no in other ways.
Can I just
which is why if you could find someone to be a joint provider, and why
this makes it easier.
John and I created this. I mean, there's really no one else that we know that does this kind of thing where you don't have to be it. And we give you the tools that unless someone really looked very hard, they wouldn't know that it's not your AGD. And I try to educate people so they're giving it as if it were my own course, and at the quality that I demand.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in and say too, I don't want it to feel like it's a bash session, because I know you guys have not made it sound that way, but I in some ways did talk about the laborious, and how, I also want to say I can see it from the standpoint of the responsibility that these organizations have taken on. I mean, this is an incredible thing. We end up talking about we're teaching content that ultimately is responsible for changing patients' lives. It could be good or bad if we don't know what we need to know as dental professionals. So I don't in any way want it to feel like it's a bash. It's just what is. It's like it's just a big process for something that is very important. And I know you're not saying this either, Sandra. I just want for those who are listening in. And anyway, I don't want it to come across that way, because I totally respect the AGD and ADA for what they're doing, and appreciate our state dental boards. And I think it's a big job that they've taken on. It's a regulatory thing. I mean, it's like,
right.
There's a reason I don't.
And that's why I say, when you see something that has AGD or ADA, AGD PACE or ADA CERP attached to it, what they went through to be able to put that little logo down there.
Yeah.
And no, I'm proud of it.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's a big deal. And I think what's making it change, Vanessa, and I'm happy to hear, like Sandra mentioned, and I keep saying this. I mean, as you know, a lot of these meetings that we've attended in this last year and a half, I give a lot of credit to these meeting planners, because the world is changing fast, and so many of them are open to these new ideas. And so you're right. I mean, just like I think the AGD and the ADA will be, I think that as the world changes, they recognize that they've got to find new ways to make it easier in order to be able to do that. But to your point, it really is true. It's that if we don't have entities like that hold up the credibility and the integrity of the content, the standard, there has to be one.
Yeah.
And with that comes a long process in many cases, as there should be, to make sure that, because if not, I think we're seeing that left to everybody's own devices in a lot of regards, anybody would do it. And yeah, this counts and this counts. And I mean, it's hard enough as it is to kind of live in the world that we live right now. Yeah. So, but maybe not on this episode, but maybe in the next couple months, if we are fortunate enough to come back here, Sandra and I have been working on something very hard and might have some exciting news to share about another national entity that is about to bring some continuing education solutions to our profession. So we are really, really excited to share. That is almost about to be made public, and we're very close.
We're very close. There, we're ready to bite that carrot. That's exciting. Yeah, definitely.
I feel like we're like the carrots in front of us too, but
well, that's very
we'll get
exciting. Would love to hear more about that. Tell us about. I know you guys have solutions for being able to partner with you. I think you called it a joint provider. How does that work through CE Exchange?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, at least the way that Sandra and I have liked to do this, is set up a brainstorming session. I think so much of this, I think this is what Sandra does a really good job about, and we try to do this together when we can, is to talk with whoever we speak with and ask them a lot of questions, right? Like, more so than just the specifics of what is needed to approve their course so that it would follow AGD guidelines. It's more of brainstorming with them on what type of courses are you going to give? Are you going to do live? Are you going to do online? Are you going to do some virtual conferences? And maybe helping them think a little bit about like their business as a whole. And so we like to start there and do, a complimentary brainstorming session just so that everybody's on the same page. And then from there, Sandra has put together a really, really good system on specific questions that people can follow through on a link that helps guide them along of what their course is all about, the information that they have. And that's when she says she goes down through that final process to make sure that they're qualified as individuals. They have what they need in order to be able to give that content.
So is that done then typically on a course by course basis, or is it that you approve them as a provider and they can use it on any of their courses throughout the year?
No, as a joint provider, it's a course by course basis. So if a course is approved, they can give that course as many times as they want. But if they want to present a different course, that would also have to be approved. To be able to give your own course whenever you wanted it, whatever that would be the AGD PACE. They would have to get their own AGD PACE.
Awesome. And so that's something, Sandra, that I understand can help them with too. Then, like if someone wanted help with guidance on filling out all the mountain of paperwork, and and just kind of someone to guide them through that process.
Right. So during this brainstorming, a lot of people come to us and say, I want to get my AGD, PACE license. And more times than not, it really isn't feasible. Between the time it takes to do the application, the cost of the application, the fact that they very well might only get 1 year and have to do it again, even just cost-wise, without time-wise, it makes sense to just become a joint provider.
Yeah. So then, I don't know if you're comfortable, share with us, what does that look like financially for especially for people right now who are trying to scramble and pull this together? Is it something that does it depend on the course, or is there a flat rate, or is that something you could share with us?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that Sandra and I got together and talked about last night, for a couple of reasons, really this fast changing world that's going on, the virtual world and the needs that people need, but then also, Vanessa, we really wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come on here. We wanted to make sure that we could have something available, for a lot of the people that you work with right now. So, what we did is, we laid it out to where, we would price it out per course. And then depending on how they're going to distribute the certificates, because in a lot of cases, if it's going to be done manually or through email and it's not on a platform that does it automatically, then the way that we've priced things out is there would, be a flat fee for Sandra to get it sponsored and do all the work that she does. And then just a very small, per attendee fee, per the certificate. So that's one of the things that we're putting together right now. And we've actually created it. So Sandra's put together a one pager for anybody that has any questions on their specific pages, course. But... Okay, 4 pages. Yeah. I know. I need to get away from saying that. I need to get away from saying that because everybody says one pager and it's never just one page. But I think the other thing that we did, Vanessa, is that we wanted to break it down by the types of courses that people could do, because like I said at the onset of this, I wanted someone to know that if you're a consultant out there or a speaker, and maybe it's going to be a couple months, you could literally sit down if you wanted to, and you could create an audio podcast. And maybe you created 6 individuals based on your content, and each one of those could count as an hour, and you could offer that as continuing education, and then if you are able to, figure out, it's just an example. There's a lot of different things to think about, but I think that we are in a world right now where I love seeing so many of the people that you're working with and other people out there getting creative, using these online platforms to get their content out there. And then, as a means for people to get continuing education. So, but we've put together a 4-pager, as Sandra mentioned, and we've got all that information on CEexchange.io. So CEexchange.io, we've put a little form field on there where people can, if they want to request a little bit of time with Sandra for her to kind of go over that, and then she can, give them all the information on pricing and stuff like that. So, but super, super affordable right now, given the circumstances we know everybody is at, and a means to be able to at least offer them the ability to offer continuing education and do it with maybe where people are financially right now. So
love that. Okay, so a couple things I'd like to unpack out of there, and thank you so much for you guys are amazing. We're all kind of a big happy family. I appreciate you guys being Jumpstart sponsors for the last couple of years, and I love you coming here and sharing with our group. I really do appreciate that. There was something I heard in what you said, John, that I hadn't really thought about before. I think what I hear you saying is that then if I were to come on as a joint provider with you and you approved my 2-day workshop, I think what you're saying is that you would then handle the certificates. I think, is that what I heard you say? I hadn't really thought about that before. So it's more than just you looking at my, somebody's taking their garbage in, sorry. So it's more than you just looking at my course and saying, oh yeah, this is approved and you can use our number. We're talking about a lot of admin, right? It's trying to approve it, right? Do I understand?
Yeah, that? I'm
and
so
we have
glad,
to keep that. We have to keep those records for 6 years.
So it's a lot of time
Yeah.
on your guys'. Every time I go to give that course over the next year, then I have to coordinate with Sandra or someone at your end who's then going to make sure my attendees get what they need. And that's what I'm hearing you say, is it really is a joint partnership.
That's absolutely correct. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because what a lot of people don't realize too, with some of these larger companies, like I think back to days with like the Nobel Biocare and a lot of these companies that gave a lot of continuing education courses during the year, they would have sometimes 3 or 4 full-time employees that literally just did the administrative work to make sure that they could keep all the records straight for their AGD and ADA license. So there is a lot of work that goes on after the event, depending on how many times somebody's going to give it. Not to mention, this new world that we live in where people might want to give something virtual and they might want to do a Facebook 2-day event or 1-day event. You can do that, but there's links you might have to put into the comments thread where you're tracking that people are there, have them fill things out at the end. We have to track things through Excel to make sure they get their certificates. And as you know, Vanessa, boy, if you go 1 day without giving the attendee their certificate, they get hot on you, right? I mean, it's like, and so those are the things, to your point, that, yeah, exactly. Which I mean, we get it, but I'm glad you brought that up, because those are some, like, what a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot of after the course work that Sandra does in a joint provider relationship to make sure that they have everything that they need, and we have what we need, because ultimately, if it's our license, it's our responsibility if we don't supply that content.
Well, that brings a lot of value to it, because instead of me at my end now having to add that to my administrative assistance workload or pay for that help at my end, it sounds to me like you guys are helping hold that burden and make sure they get everything they need. I can see where it's such a great value versus me doing it all on my own. $800 might be every year that I'm having to reapply all that time and energy plus managing it all. I just the light bulb finally came on. So thanks for letting me explore that a little bit more.
Yep.
And then you mentioned that information is going to be on ceexchange.io, your website.
Correct.
I'm going to ask you again before we leave here in just a minute, but if we wanted to email you about that, what would be the best email to find out more about that?
I think that would just be Sandra. So you could go ahead and you could email Sandra at ceexchange.io. So that's Sandra at ceexchange.io. And you can either go that way, or if they go to the website, there's a little form field where they can put their name and information. That'll go right to Sandra. But that would be the best way to go, is just email her directly.
Excellent. So one other question for you guys, same but different topic, a little bit to the side, the next lane over. Talking about virtual meetings, and we all know Dentalcast Productions, and you guys have been at Jumpstart with your cameras and live streaming, and that we see you all around the industry at live meetings, live streaming. Now that things are a little different, do you have a solution for the speaker or consultant around how can you help us with now that we're not meeting in person right now? Do you have a solution for that?
Absolutely. So what we are doing is the application that we use, we use Switcher Studio. And so the best way I can do it, Vanessa, is to give you an example. So this past weekend, we did an event with the Maryland Dental Hygiene Association. So they had about 150 hygienists that they had to cancel their meeting, and they had 6 speakers. And they had asked us if we would be able to bring together all 6 speakers over a 2-day event and virtually all of their content out to their 150 hygienists. And so there's really 2 pieces to this. There's the production piece, which is making all of that work, right? Coordinating with all of the speakers so that they all log into the link at the same time, and then making sure they have all their PowerPoints and all of there's a lot of work that goes on. And it's interesting because it like you mentioned, we've been doing this live streaming work for a while now. We are now officially in this world where we think a lot of the speakers and consultants and people out there are seeing the value of treating a lot of this like a production, like a TV show, because a lot of the things we're going to start to do, it is like that. And I loved the fact that you were showing that book, How to Have an Online Meeting, because I think another part of this is all of us getting, it's little tiny things, right? It's your microphone, it's your camera, it's your internet, it's the way that you
Your
come
lighting.
across on your lighting,
everything.
Everything matters. And I think, when you combine your content with all of that, this is the new world that we're going to live in. So there's a lot of pieces and parts. So yes, I mean, that's something that we love to do, to provide that service to anybody that wants to give a meeting where they can get out there and do that. So yeah, I mean, and again, I think that like anything, like Sandra mentioned, for a lot of people, we help them because they don't want to do a lot of the extra work. And in some cases, people do want to go and get their own AGD license, and that's wonderful if they want to do the work. Same thing on the production side. I've had conversations with probably, 15 or 16 people here just in the last week on, John, I want to give my own virtual event. Like, what can I do? And I love that. I love the fact that people are taking the time to learn these technologies because it's exciting and there's a lot of new ways to do things and to still get your message out to people. So
definitely. So if we want to reach out to you to find out more about your solution, that would be john@dentalcastproductions.com.
Yes. Yep.
Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, guys, we have had a great group that have hung with us. Thank you all who are online. And I normally am able to type back and say hello, but for some reason, Be Live in the last week, probably because everybody's working at home, it's not giving me a place to type. So I would normally say thank you for being here and thank you. So I'll just tell you verbally and thank you for the questions. There's a couple questions in here that you guys have asked that if you listen back, you're going to get your answer to it, and we can provide some instruction on that here in the comments later. So before we go, John and Sandra, is there anything we haven't chatted about tonight that you feel would be important for speakers and consultants or planners to know right now around offering CE for their meetings or going live?
Go ahead, Sandra.
Let's see. I think just, that you can do it, and you need to ask for help and realize that there might be a little bit of investment in time and money, but ultimately it'll be worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I just think, again, I think like we mentioned at the onset of this, it is a new world, and if we choose to embrace it, if we choose to learn the new way to communicate, one thing is constant, and that's content. And that hasn't changed in the last 30 days since we've all had somewhat of this seismic shift. There's so many great people. I know there's a lot of great people that work with Vanessa, DSI, and are learning the ways of becoming a speaker. And, take this opportunity to get creative, look at the resources, and most importantly, get your message out, right? I mean, people want to hear what you have to say. And now there's no better time than now. So.
Couldn't have said it better. Thank you. We wrapped a little tied a bow and wrapped a ribbon around it and tied a bow. Is that how it goes? I can get that out eventually. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts with us. We have Sandra Berger. You can reach her, Sandra, at ceexchange.io. John Stamper, John@dentalcastproductions.com. The website's addresses are in those as well if you want to find them online. Now, thank you guys for being sponsors at Jumpstart and being with us each January. We appreciate you. Appreciate you taking time tonight. And thank you all for listening in. Until next time, everyone, take good care of you. Everyone, be well. We've got this. We're just going to get through it together. And I know we're going to emerge stronger on the other end. All right. Thank you all. And have a great night.
Thanks, Vanessa. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.